And so a lot of what my political positions are misunderstood. What I said most recently about Donald Trump, I also said that I felt that I wished that the Democrats had uh, a stronger candidate to oppose him so that people could vote more for that guy than against Donald Trump. But for the record, I have never spoken out against any Democratic or Republican presidential candidate ever. In truth, I was friendly with George H.W. Bush, friendly with George W. Bush, friendly with John McCain, friendly with Mitt Romney. If you ask me, do I respect Bob Dole? Of course. Think about Bob Dole getting out of a wheelchair in his state at age 96 and managing a salute, one soldier to the other, in front of John McCain's casket. That's an act of grace that Donald Trump is incapable of. It would never cross his mind.
Legendary broadcaster Bob Costas was on the Awful Announcing podcast and gave his thoughts on politics as well as Donald Trump.
So it's only with Trump that I have said things. And what I said on Smerconish, I said that Trump derangement syndrome is real, but it's his supporters who have it. You know, that's the way MAGA media and some of Trump's supporters cast aside all the obvious criticisms of Trump. The real Trump derangement syndrome is on the part of anyone. The delusion is on the part of anyone who by now believes that Donald Trump was ever emotionally, psychologically, intellectually, or ethically fit to be president of the United States. I'd expand that now, talking to you, to hold any position of public trust. That is not an anti-conservative position or an anti-Republican position. Despite cartoonish characterizations, I'm not a far-left guy. I sample media broadly.
And it was a wide-ranging, fascinating interview. Let's hear more, then discuss.
Those who are big Trump supporters are deluded on several levels, one of which is that, oh yeah, his personality may rub people the wrong way, but look at all these things he did. First of all, there's a big difference between personality and character. Does Trump have an obnoxious, abrasive, graceless personality? Sure. But he also has abhorrent character. And that's a factor here. It's what led him to not only lie constantly, but to put out the big lie, which he still insists upon, despite the fact that it's been refuted over and over about the 2020 election. Such a person should be nowhere near the Oval Office. And if such a person were the Democratic candidate, if the Democratic Party were under the delusion that such a person should be president, then I would criticize that situation and their delusion.
Hard to disagree. Here's one last soundbite from Costas.
But a lot of the things that I've said over time, Brandon, are things that I would think conservatives would embrace. I've always criticized and, when possible, asked questions of the IOC about their troubling affinity for authoritarian regimes. I was on the whole sports washing thing, whether it was FIFA or now Live Golf or the IOC. I talked about that a lot. In the Olympics, when Saudi Arabia came in some years ago, I forget which Olympics it was, I noted that they had X number of people in their delegation, but not a single woman. This at a time when the IOC's objective was to get to 50-50. So I think my thing is not to come from a left wing or right wing perspective. It's to come from what I believe is a principled common sense perspective. And the one thing that was most distorted and kind of began this caricature of me was the gun thing in 2012.
All right, let's recap. We have some takeaways here, but before we get into it, please, if you can, become a channel member. Go to youtube.com/TYT Sports to keep us afloat. In addition, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Appreciate the support. Speaking of, this video is via Awful Announcing. Shout out to Ben Koo, who runs the site. Brandon Contes does a lot of writing and podcasting, and many others. If you want to hear the full interview, which I highly, highly suggest you do, Go to the Awful Announcing YouTube channel. We cover a lot of sports media stuff here, as y'all have seen, but they interview those behind the mic and or in front of the camera. So please subscribe to their page. We will leave a link in the description box below. Here are my takeaways. The first is Bob Costas says that he is not far left and he's not right. So being a centrist, there are pros and cons on the personal level. And it is thinking that there is a relation with how loony both sides are, when really, as George Carlin said, a person on the left is about morality and they care about people, whereas those on the right care about property and sucking up to billionaires. And that I largely agree with. But him saying I'm not far left is kind of a tell, because as I've seen in discussions with the older generation, they view far left as being this dangerous movement that is going to hinder democracy and hinder American society, when it's not. The furthest left, let's say, is a socialist mindset, which can only help out because it is truly the embodiment of caring about your neighbor and, to borrow the Christians, loving thy neighbor. In addition, him saying that, look, I can't believe the right wing doesn't agree with me because I went after sports washing and FIFA and Live Golf and the IOC. You know, they didn't have enough women. The IOC said they wanted to be 50-50. Let me paint the picture for you here, Bob. The right wing does not care about sports washing. You know why? Let's go to your Live Golf example. Live Golf, as I predicted, and I still believe that this is accurate, was a opportunity for the Saudis to funnel money to their candidate of choice, Donald Trump, by not disclosing how much they would be paying Donald Trump to host their events at his properties, because he successfully did their bidding while he was in the White House. In addition, he has benefited aplenty financially because of this. And with Greg Norman there, we've seen videos of it. Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene. What have we seen? The MAGA crowd who shows up in red hats chant 4 more years, make America great again, FJB, all this stuff. Live Golf is, in a way, the embodiment of right-wing politics and how they really believe that they want a separation of sports and politics. Yet, not only do they do it, they go head first diving into the pool of sports and politics by chanting those slogans at a golf event. So they don't care about sports washing because the right wing has shown that they don't care anymore if we turn into an authoritarian state, which we already kind of are, on the level that Donald Trump is in charge. So saying I went after Live Golf, conservatives should agree with me. They're not going to agree with you because that is, in a way, their league of choice at this point. They think the NFL cares too much about Black Lives Matter because they simply put end racism, a meaningless slogan when you consider that they completely ousted Colin Kaepernick and others for kneeling in protest to simply say racism is bad. And hey, there's a huge problem with policing in America, something we all know and have seen and have studied the statistics and saw the summer protests that occurred when every white person who was hundreds of years behind history finally, somehow, some way, in one way or another, got caught up. So that's another argument. Him also going after Saudi Arabia, if there were to be a poll of Republican voters on their feelings of the Saudis, you will see how much It has loosened over the years. Same thing with Russia, because Marjorie Taylor Greene and many others have shown that they don't care anymore. They will suck up to Russia for a dime. They will suck up to Saudi Arabia for a dime, and they will do so at the expense of the American taxpayers that put them in these positions. Now, here's something that I do agree with. When he was saying, these are the two candidates, and I think it's unfair. Yeah, I completely agree. I think every single person on the left, except for like a classic liberal, will agree with this, because nobody believes in Joe Biden. Nobody believed in him when he ran. And Costas was right, that it's not that you're in support of Joe Biden, it's that you're so against Donald Trump. And that is exactly the problem, is we have let me rephrase. There is so much money with the RNC and the DNC, and they just pick. It's not the will of the voters, it's the will of the DNC and the RNC. That's what it is. And the one thing that he never addressed, which is true, is the power of the dollar in politics. Because as I've stated many times, and what this network was built upon, it is the problem that is holding us back from progress.